fell in only 28 days. The death of fear, at this time on AlJazeera. AlJazeera focused as the troops pulled out. We focused when barriers were built and walls came down.
Women have been voted into parliament.
On the raising of one voice and the silencing of another.
Somebody knew he was coming.
We focused when bombs fell.
Potter, go.
And when Gaza stood alone. Throughout the Middle East, we focus on news and documentaries that matter to you. AlJazeera, television that truly inspires.
Muammar Gaddafi makes an appearance in Tripoli as the fight for control of Libya intensifies. Libyan rebels say they're closing in on government strongholds, but they're facing a sustained fight back.
The pro-Gaddafi forces have aircraft, the opposition fighters don't. It's their one really big disadvantage.
Hello and welcome. I'm Divi Gopal and you're watching Al Jazeera live from Doha. Also on this program, NATO's eyes in the sky keeps track of Libyan airspace as some rebels renew calls for a no-fly zone to ground Gaddafi's air force. And security forces open fire in Egypt as protesters try to seize secret documents relating to the Mubarak regime. As Muammar Gaddafi appeared to rally his supporters in Tripoli, battles for control of Libya were raging across the country. Gaddafi has ordered a counter-offensive. What began as a series of anti-government protests now looks more like the beginning of a civil war. And these are the main flashpoints. In the east, there are reports of fighting between pro- and anti-Gaddafi forces. In Tobruk, Benghazi is the stronghold of rebel fighters who say they remain in control of the city. Anti-Gaddafi fighters have continued their push in the west. In Ras Lanuf and Bin Jawad, there's been heavy fighting. Misrata is a strategically located town between the capital Tripoli and Gaddafi's hometown of Sirte. Now, there's been fierce fighting in the city with reports of at least 18 people killed. The capital, Tripoli, remains a bastion for Muammar Gaddafi and his supporters. But in neighboring Zawiya, rebels say they have repelled a counterattack by Gaddafi's forces to regain the city. Stephanie Decker has the latest.
Celebrations in Misrata. This internet video claims the town remains firmly in opposition control, and some of the casualties of that battle. Another video appears to show dead pro-Gaddafi fighters. But the government maintains they are making gains in the east of the country.
Today, what happened in Misrata, one of the brigades took the repositioned and didn't want to engage in the fighting. And despite that, the locals managed to capture 37 of the militia groups.
It's a propaganda war, where what's really happening on the ground is sometimes impossible to confirm. But this, not an illusion. The leader himself making a brief appearance in the capital. State television keen to send out the message, all is well. Besides, the casualties continue to rise. This, the local hospital in Ras Lanuf. Opposition forces were forced to retreat to the town after heavy fighting for control of Bin Jawad, on the road to Gaddafi's hometown and stronghold of Sirte. Whether either side is making as much ground as it claims still remains very unclear. But it seems the propaganda mirrors the fighting. Libya is a divided country, and both sides are telling very different stories. Stephanie Decker, Al Jazeera.
Well, as we saw in that report, there's been more fighting in Misrata, which lies to the east of Tripoli. Mohammed Ali is a member of the Civil Committee for Misrata Affairs. My colleague Imran Garda asked him how the rebels were going to continue their fight against the Libyan army.
Our armory is not a lot. What we rely on is willpower and the belief that we want to liberate our country, and the amount of dislike and hate towards the system and the dictator. I heard one of your earlier reports that Gaddafi might outgun us, but he will not outnumber us, and his forces do not have the determination that we have.
Do you want outside help?
Yes, specific help. A no-fly zone is long overdue, and selective surgical strikes, I think, are called for.
A prominent U.S. senator has said direct military interventions, such as targeted airstrikes, would be counterproductive. Instead, John Kerry said the international community should prepare a no-fly zone in the event of a massacre of civilians by the Libyan Air Force.
1, prepare a no-fly zone in conjunction with our allies, not implement it. Certainly, first hope would be, if it were called on, to be done only in the context of international agreement and sanction. But right now they don't want that, and I think that's good. The last thing we want to think about is any kind of military intervention, and I don't consider the fly zone stepping over that line. We don't want troops on the ground. They don't want troops on the ground. That would be counterproductive.
Now, much of the military equipment needed to enforce a no-fly zone is already in position on the Mediterranean island of Malta. Our correspondent James Bass is there.
These aircraft are NATO's eyes and ears. The AWACS is packed with the most sophisticated cameras, surveillance and monitoring equipment. NATO maintains these planes are working as part of a counter-terrorism mission which has been in place since 9/11. But that mandate is a pretty broad one, checking on suspicious aircraft and ships. And in recent days, they've been tracked constantly in the skies near Libya. They've been showing particular interest in this Libyan aircraft, part of Colonel Gaddafi's VIP fleet based at Mytika near Tripoli. The plane, a Falcon 900, which flew from Belarus last week, was this weekend returning from Jordan. This recording was made of the radio communications with air traffic controllers in Malta.
NATO 07, go ahead.
Do you have any information on an aircraft with the squawk 2017 positioned about 85 miles east of our?
7, that should be a Falcon 900, flight level 340 with a destination Mytika according to FlightNet.
Malta's airport has been hosting planes in the island's main harbour, a South Korean destroyer which has been evacuating workers from Libya. Military vessels from a number of NATO countries are just off the coast. With a fleet of Western naval vessels offshore, there is concern here in Malta, an EU nation, but one that prizes itself on its neutrality. A former Prime Minister of Malta told me he doesn't believe Western powers when they say they're only here to evacuate their nationals.
The economic crisis, because if I were in their place, I would exploit the opportunity I